Welcome to Chappaquiddick on Bayou St. John. This video is a memorial to Shelly Haensel. Shelly was killed on February 17 of 1995 in Bayou St. John. The bayou is located adjacent to City Park in New Orleans, Louisiana. Shelly was just 25 years old when she was killed. She attended Mount Carmel Academy for high school and the University of New Orleans. The person responsible for Shelly's death was a graduating doctor from the LSU Medical School in New Orleans. He worked at Charity Hospital in New Orleans as part of his training. The doctor was rescued from the shallow bayou by New Orleans police officers. While still at the crime scene, he refused to tell New Orleans police that Shelly was still trapped in the car. He was rushed to Charity Hospital where he worked. 3 doctors at Charity Hospital placed 3 intravenous drips in his arm immediately upon arrival. Blood samples taken for alcohol and drug testing in the hospital lab met with lab accidents. No replacement tests were ordered. The blood sample taken by one of the doctors as evidence for the New Orleans police was improperly taken and contaminated by the intravenous fluids. Please help Shelly's family and friends identify the doctors responsible for the obstruction of justice that occurred at Charity Hospital on that tragic night. For the full story of the homicide, visit Shelly's memorial website located at ChappaquiddickOnTheBayou.com or at ShellyHaensel.com. Thanks for your help.
What day is this?
I'm washing and it's Shelly's sweetheart's birthday.
I didn't know they were going to have all called on. Cheryl, why don't you take that camera?
I know, that's a nice picture.
Go, cameraman!
A local doctor receives the maximum penalty for the drunk driving death of his passenger.
25-year-old Shelly Haensel was a champion swimmer, a lifeguard who drowned inside a car on the bottom of Bayou St. John. She was trapped in a seatbelt while the doctor she was with escaped through a sunroof and then hesitated to call for help. Today, the former charity oral surgeon, Chris Neighbors, was sentenced to the maximum 15 years in prison for vehicular homicide. Just hours before the accident at Parkway Tavern, Neighbors threatened a cop trying to stop him from fighting. Neighbors admits he said, "If you throw me out of here, you better hope you never come to Charity." And then there was the truck he bought after the accident with a decal marked Splash on it. His friends said he didn't mean anything by it, and they testified as to what a caring person he is. But the judge didn't buy it.
What the court took into consideration was everything that happened that night and all the facts that happened that night and really focused on it.
Neighbors admitted today that he is an alcoholic, and he said that on the night of the accident he'd been drinking very heavily. But when his blood alcohol content was measured here at Charity Hospital that night, it came out at only 0.04, and even the defense admitted the sample had been contaminated. And earlier during the trial, EMS technicians testified it was the only case they could remember where they weren't allowed to remain present in the room when the test was taken. The DA's office has launched an investigation of possible obstruction of justice at Charity Hospital.
Dr. Christopher Neighbors has been sentenced to 15 years for vehicular homicide. About a year ago, he drove his car into Bayou St. John, and his passenger, 25-year-old Shelly Haensel, drowned. Dr. Neighbors admits he got drunk at a carnival parade last February and was speeding down Wisner Boulevard. Today, he got the maximum sentence, but with good time, he could be out in 7.5 years.
Shelly Haensel would be 29 years old today if her date had not driven his car into Bayou St. John while under the influence of alcohol. Dr. Christopher Neighbors escaped and is now serving a 15-year sentence for her death.
Well, Tom and Carla, officials here at UNMH say they did conditionally admit 39-year-old Christopher Neighbors. The state then went ahead and granted him a residency license. But after doing a more thorough background check on Neighbors, UNMH changed its mind. This is a piece of Christopher Neighbors' past that came back to haunt him. His car being pulled out of a bayou in New Orleans on a rainy night in 1995. He made it out, but still strapped in her seat was Sandra Haensel's 25-year-old daughter, Michelle. At the time, Neighbors was a Louisiana State medical student. After the accident, Neighbors reportedly told police, quote, "I don't know the bitch's name, I just picked her up at a bar." He also purchased a truck with the word splash on the back, something that didn't amuse the judge who sentenced him to 15 years for vehicular homicide. But last year, Neighbors was paroled. That's when he decided to pick up his medical career in New Mexico. In September this year, the state's medical board granted Neighbors a residency license. With that license, Neighbors was conditionally admitted to the family practice program at UNMH. UNMH officials say after a background check, however, they rejected Neighbors because of his felony conviction. They say he was never on the payroll and that he never saw a single patient. However, Neighbors' picture still appears on the hospital's website, and UNMH says he may be trying to appeal their decision.